I kept getting reminded that while those jobs were well paying and really, big titles and everything, it meant nothing to me. An epiphany struck me that, if I don't build things on my own, you're not really adding meaningful value to the world. So quit abruptly, left a cushy life in Singapore to move back to India, to Delhi, to set up my first company.
You built 2 startups of your own. What is something that really kind of punched you in the face because you just were not ready for it?
Avinav Nigam is the founder and CEO of Turn Group, an AI-driven platform transforming global healthcare recruitment.
An IIT Bombay graduate who began his career in Japan, he has built businesses across Europe and India worth over $10 billion.
Served on Cars 24's executive team and co-founded Immo, a prop tech company backed with $2 billion. Today, Avinav leads Turn across 13 countries.
With 100-plus employees, $20 million in ARR, and $33 million in funding, driving innovation at the intersection of technology, policy, and global impact.
Timing, it's everything. So why now? Why are you able to uniquely do this, solve this problem now? And why wasn't it possible before?
Probably one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur to do, to figure out whether you are too late or whether you're too early or whether the timing is exactly right.
If you build companies smartly, you're building a really, really long-term business here and sustainable outcomes. This is probably going to be a bit controversial. You should never actively raise. You should let it happen to you. So you should not be selling, they should be buying.
MENA Means Business, and because you're watching this, I know so do you. Hi, my name is Meenah Tariq, and I'm the CEO and co-founder at Metric, where we've built the chief financial AI for businesses across emerging markets. So when you're a founder, I think one of the best pieces of advice that you get, or generally the advice that you get, comes from other founders. And something like this happened to us. At a 4-year-old's birthday party, we luckily sat next to somebody who we ended up chatting with for what felt definitely like hours. And he ended up giving us a piece of advice that has changed the course of at least revenues at Metric. And by that, I mean revenues have grown because of the advice that he gave us. He should have charged us for that advice. But it is my honor today to have Avi with us in the studio. Avi is a great friend now, but beyond that, he's also a phenomenal founder. And I think the world needs to hear his story. So Avi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Meenah. Super excited to be here. And honestly, you guys are building one of the most potentially epic companies in the region. And I was super happy to be able to at least have a conversation about it with you.
Thank you so much. And now that you're our friend, we will continue to take your advice over and over again. And I think we're so lucky when we're able to find people who, with whom our vibes match, but also find people with whom we can have the same shared vision and shared mission and kind of shared viewpoint of the world. And when your kids get along, it gets even better.
Gets even better.
Yeah. So Avi, I want to know your story. I know you've moved to the UAE more recently, but you're building a phenomenal business here. It's called Turn, and I want to hear more of that. But let's start a little bit with your background. You started off from India. You ended up in the UK. You've done great work across multiple markets. You worked with Disney Plus. You worked with NASPA's. You built 2 startups of your own. So walk me through your journey a little bit.
Sure. A bit of a, scattered childhood. I actually grew up between the UK and India as a kid. I've migrated 9 times.
Wow.
As a kid.
Wow.
Moved around a lot. My father was the head of human resources for the largest human organization on the planet. It's called the Indian Railways.
Okay.
So we've literally seen large workforces, public sector, how they get managed at scale, how countries take these decisions. And anyway, I did my engineering in Bombay from this nerdy place called IIT. I then went from Mumbai to rural Japan as my first job. So I started off with a company called Procter & Gamble, P&G, in a production facility in rural Japan with 300 Japanese people and 1 Indian guy.
Wow. And a complete shift from Mumbai.
I didn't know the language, I didn't know the culture, I didn't know the people, I had no idea, I didn't know the food.
And the pace of life.
pace of life is
probably was
completely
dramatically different. Yeah.
Completely different. I think to be able to accept a new country as your own, to be able to integrate into a new culture, to be able to make friends again, to be able to learn the language. I speak Japanese, was just one of the hardest and also the most rewarding things of my career.
Wow.
So spent several years in Japan. I then moved to Singapore. I ran the Asia business for P&G out of Singapore for the detergents business called Ariel. I then quit abruptly when sort of things were looking very, very rosy. An epiphany struck me that if I don't build things on my own, you're not really adding meaningful value to the world. I couldn't see myself as people that were above me. So quit abruptly, left a cushy life in Singapore to move back to India, to Delhi, to set up my first company. And that's sort of how it was called Zaza. We were building a healthy, plant-based meal delivery service. 15 years ahead of its time.
At that time, probably plant-based or meal delivery, they were both quite new, right?
It was very, very early.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest learnings I had, we scaled, we did quite well, raised a bit of venture, realized the market wasn't ready.
Yeah.
We were catering to 1% of the population at max, and the 99% didn't care. So all the celebrities and everybody would order from us, and we were like, okay, this is great, but didn't really go anywhere. And I think one of the biggest learnings I've had since then is that really try to understand where you are on the journey of product market fit, and timing tends to trump a lot of things as well. So really know whether you're at the cusp of something or you're already too late or you're 10 years too early.
Yeah.
And for us, that was the mistake with a plant-based meal delivery
But that's
service.
so hard to know when you feel so strongly about something, right? We're just in the first, 5 minutes of this podcast and he's already dropped a gem. But see, that is probably one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur to do, to figure out whether you are too late or whether you're too early or whether the timing is exactly right, because it does come down to timing.
Yeah.
So how do you have the kind of self-reflection and the fortitude to be able to say, okay, I feel very passionately about this, but this is just not the right time. And then I have to step away maybe.
I think it's super hard, especially when it's your first. I feel like both me and my co-founder, we had, I did the first with my wife actually. So
Sonal.
Similar to you guys, lots of learnings for me there. And I think we had difference in opinion in terms of the direction of travel, and I wanted to pivot more to a food delivery model similar to Swiggy and Zomato, some of the listed companies recently in India. Whereas I think they wanted to keep the model more towards the actual plant-based mission. And I feel both were right in our own ways. It's just the outcomes would have been slightly different models to take. How do you know when it's PMF is about around the corner? Honestly, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is, I would say take a thesis that is large enough, play in a large TAM category. That I think I've realized is definitely one very key input or thought. The second thing is, I would say, be flexible about the execution within that category. If you marry yourself to a specific model, I think, and you're too almost rigid in the execution that customers might appreciate, you will lose out. So third thing naturally is listen to the sense, the customer feedback signals, exactly.
Pick up those signals.
Pick up the signals that are coming back. And honestly, I think you need to be able to read the tea leaves a little bit in terms of, what are the, tailwinds that your category is starting to emerge with. And I do think right now in time, we're sitting at a very interesting moment in time where almost categories that were completely not relevant for venture have suddenly become relevant for venture because of how sort of unit economics.
We'll talk about
that's an insider joke.
AI versus unit economics. Yeah.
So I think when you're selling faster than you can keep up, I think when people are more excited about, happy to pay you money for something that you feel, you can charge much more than you believe the market rate for something is. That's when you're getting to PMF. But how do you actually get to it? I think it's really about continuous iterations and not giving up on that as long as the macro thesis holds.
Yeah. So, you also hit on something else, which is founder issues. and your co-founder was Sonal your wife at that time, or no? You had
She was my wife at the time, and luckily we continued.
survived
We survived it. Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
well
yeah.
done. Because that's also an interesting story in itself, right? When you build a startup with your spouse, and when and if the startup doesn't work out, do you or do you not survive? Like, how does your relationship play out?
I think a startup is as close to a child as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And statistically, as far as we know, that if parents go through an unfortunate situation of losing somebody, that they don't stay together. I think in a very similar way, being in a relationship, being together, and having a baby like a startup and losing it is traumatic.
Yeah.
It is genuinely a very hard experience to get over. And I think we to the day, I think we still have moments where we do believe, what if, right? What if we could have done it something differently? But that process of reconciling and appreciating and closing the door, if you will, and almost having shared that beautiful journey together has brought us closer.
Yeah, nice. And I know you now have 2 beautiful kids together. So, your bond is as strong as ever, which is amazing. So you went from that to Cars 24 then?
Yes. So exactly. So we shut down that business, and then I joined a friend of mine who was building this company very early. So essentially, the part of the founding team, which was looking at a marketplace in used cars. So looking at a model where you've got fragmented supply of cars, and being able to sort of connect that to a consolidated but unprofessional demand of car dealers or car companies, and providing this quality layer in between, which is able to create a lot more trust and dependency, reliability around the transaction, solve the documentation headaches, solve the long lead time problems, blah, blah, blah. And I think that made a lot of sense to me at that point in time, because we had a horrid experience buying a used car. So we ended up sort of joining that, building that company out over several years.
A used car salesman is like a slur, right? When you want to say somebody's shady, you're like, oh, this person acts like a used car salesman, because it is kind of a world over belief that those people are out to con you.
Exactly.
So it is a very tough market. So did you enjoy that journey of building the startup? Because you're obviously then now into your 3rd startup. And Cars 24 is really big now.
So I think I was first of all, I think when you ask me like when people ask me what's the learnings that you have, and can you explain what should and shouldn't be done in a startup, I'm like, I don't know how to teach you, right? I have no idea, because so much of it is learning through doing and failing. And there's a lot of these things you get through osmosis, through your team and your the founders and sort of the market, the learnings. But essentially, to me, like, that was probably the most unlocking experience to see the journey. We went from zero to literally trying to ask people in a petrol station whether they would like to sell us their car in middle of Gurgaon, where people are like, what is wrong with you? And to building that business to when I left, you're doing around $250 million, $300 million in revenues.
Wow.
was just the most absurd, crazy experience, right? To figure out how do you build a customer habit. We had to change behavior from companies talking to customers saying, hey, please buy this product from us, to, hey, can you sell us your car? I'm like, this is a complete reverse psychology. So it was a very interesting journey.
And people must have been like, is this a scam? Like, if you're knocking on cars saying, sell me your car, they're like, what scam are you running right now? I'll call the police on you.
Of course. And because it's such a big transaction for many people in the subcontinent, it's probably one of the biggest transactions of their lives, apart from real estate or marriages, if you will.
A car is probably the biggest asset or any kind of vehicle is probably one of the biggest assets for most families, right? Like, owning a house is that kind of middle class dream, but the accessible asset to get to owning a house is usually some kind of vehicle, whether it's a motorbike or a car.
Exactly. So I think a lot of our focus went in trying to create that psychological safety and comfort around the brand. A lot of it went into saying, hey, your car is going to be taken care of, your documents are going to be managed, you will be safe. So the experience was pretty magical, because people would come into the store, sip some chai, and by the time they were done, this inspector had gone and put in 200 data points into an app, and the live sort of auction had happened as well. So within 30 minutes, and then while you're sipping chai and chatting, your car was already sold, and you were given the best price. You could just say yes or no. It was pretty magical experience. And then an Uber or a Kareem would come and take you home, right?
Yeah.
So I think just creating something that used to take months and a lot of stress and an anxiety into a frictionless, almost a 5-star experience. I think it taught me a lot on how to really create what Brian Chesky calls like 10x experiences versus the category. And I think that's sort of what one of the things that I've taken from it is customer experience and sort of being the 10x version of what the category has, being able to create scale and really operations that scale well with data-driven sort of decisions, as well as honestly having a very common shared vision that percolates throughout the org. It really drives the business forward. I think those are the 3 things that I took away.
How many people was the company by the time you left?
I think we were in the ballpark of 2,500-3,000.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it had become really big by the time. And then you went from that to the UK.
Yes.
You migrated again.
I migrated again.
Yeah.
So we after the birth of our first daughter, we moved back to the UK. I'd grown up there previously to set up my second company in real estate, also a tech company. It was essentially a asset management platform for investing into European real estate for large institutions.
So we were saying before fractional was cool.
Exactly. Before fractional was cool, we were doing fractional, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm a Blackstone, I want to put 500 million into German real estate. I can't do that, especially Resi, which is I would say, best beta adjusted asset class, like the lowest risk and the highest alpha. But the problem with residential real estate in Europe, at least, is that there's not as much development like in Middle East or India or wherever. So access to secondary stock is super hard. In a very similar way to cars, it's a C2B model. So you've got fragmented supply on one side, which is consumers doing transactions with each other.
Trying to do it on their own.
And you've got on the other side, you've got institutions like asset managers, Blackstone, PGIM, Nuveen, that are looking to invest into that real estate. But for them, it's impossible to find those assets, or think you can't buy 200K deals and try and make a $500 million portfolio. It just doesn't work. So we created that previously machine learning, now AI layer that was able to scout the market every week for thousands of assets and identify the top 1% opportunities. We would then underwrite those deals like a Blackstone would do for a 50 million investment. We were doing the same thing for a 200K investment, and then be able to transact immediately as well. So it's sort of very similar to cards, created a surreal magical experience for people that were looking to sell. And suddenly somebody will give you a call and say, hey, come from this company, can we look at your property, but this is the offer we would like to make. They're like, okay, sure, come on in. And the moment we'd come on in, we'll take, with the app, we'll take all the data points and immediately show them a full-blown sort of report valuation of the property and say, this is what we would like to do. We're a cash buyer. I mean, it was just, for them, it was just the most impressive experience of
So
their
how did
lives.
it work out for the company?
So the company is doing really well.
Yeah.
We sort of manage now around $2.5 billion under assets in Germany.
Are you still involved?
I am a big cheerleader.
Okay.
I'm an advisor to the management. I don't operate.
But you've
any-
exited.
I've exited, yeah.
Okay.
But I keep. I have a large shareholding, but I'm not actively involved anymore. We raised a little bit of venture. At Cars, obviously, we raised several hundred million. In IMO, we raised around $150 million in venture as well. Yeah.
Wow. A little bit of venture, $150 million. We raised a little bit of, but I was saying, I'm trying to guess at what ages you were doing this, because you have so many things that you've done. Are you a vampire, Avi? Because from here you went to Naspers.
Yeah.
So you did the PNG and then entrepreneurship, then big startup that became big, then your own venture again, then you exited that, and then you went from that to Naspers.
Yeah.
So how long did you spend at Naspers? And then while you were there, you came up with Turn.
Yes, exactly. So look, both the Disney Plus experiences where I was running the South Asia sort of
I missed Disney
marketing
Plus
business for
in
them.
that list, yeah.
And Naspers were shorter. I think it was more almost like a career sabbatical in some ways.
To take time off.
I was taking
You
time
decided
off.
to work at Naspers.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. No, but I think honestly, those companies are great to give you perspective.
Yeah.
I think I learned, like Bob Iger has sort of just instilled an incredible culture at Disney. There's so much for us to sort of learn from there. I saw the journey to 100 million users as well. So just sort of, saw IPL on cricket on the app, and Game of Thrones, and saw all of that journey. It was very, very interesting. Similar at Naspers, sort of running the payment gateway business for them. But I think those were more pit stops in the actual journey. And I kept getting reminded that while those jobs were well paying and really, big titles and everything,
Yeah.
it meant nothing to me.
Yeah.
And my true meaning and why I believe the best founders actually need to be slightly psychologically broken,
Yeah.
is that I had to keep building.
Yeah.
That was the realization I had.
No, I totally understand it. I am just reminded of when I first started working, I got out of undergrad. I was one of the first few people in my class to get a job. And it was at one of the bigger telecom companies in Pakistan. I was really proud of myself. I thought I'd done great. So this is the early days also of LinkedIn. So I was posting about it. I posted something on LinkedIn, and my English teacher from 6th grade, who had left the country and moved back to England, she commented on it and she said, "Yeah, this is great, but I envision better things for you." And I was a bit
wow.
put off. I was like, really? Like, I think I'm doing great. Like, what? But I realize now that I was such a tiny cog in this massive machine. And then, honestly, the vision and the mission of that company really, I didn't join that workplace for the sake of any kind of mission or vision alignment.
Yeah.
But now the work that I do, I realize what she meant, right? So that's kind of what it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Tell me about Turn. First of all, tell all of us about the meaning of the word, because when you were talking about your dad being in Indian Railways and the massive movement of humankind that you probably were exposed to very early on, and then the number of times you yourself migrated, that probably, connects very closely to your mission at Turn, right?
Exactly.
So tell us all about that.
Sure. So I'll tell you the genesis of how it happened as well. And this is why my wife hates me, right? IMO was supposed to be the retirement plan, right?
Yeah.
Financially and security-wise, everything, and company was doing exceptionally well. We were sort of growing leaps and bounds. We had like a massive AUM business. It just pays for itself. 70% gross margin, like ridiculously good business, right? What happened? So I sort of had a close friend. She used to sit next to me in London at our office in IMO, and she, extremely smart, 32-year-old lawyer, Oxford grad, one of the top sort of people I'd worked with. Honestly, the warmest person I'd worked with. She ended up getting cancer. She got leukemia, stage 3. She went through 5 months of chemo, very rough. On her family, and she was at one of the best hospitals you would imagine in London. Without naming the trust, she beat the cancer.
Okay.
So she was cancer-free. She was done. And at that point in time, there was a lot of nurse strikes and doctor strikes happening in the NHS. She was because of shortages, workforce shortages. They didn't have enough beds, so she was asked to vacate the hospital.
Okay.
In that condition, she was sent into social care. They didn't have the workforce available, so she was sent home. So for almost 8 to 10 weeks, there was almost nothing available for her.
Wow.
And I was just, and in that moment, she got a lung infection. She needed a hospital back, the bed back. Like within 24 hours, she was gone.
Oh my God, that's horrible. I'm sorry that you went through that. That sounds just absolutely traumatic.
I think it was just, thank you, but I think the whole idea that there is something that you rely on that actually is much more fragile than you think it is.
Yeah.
I think it broke something inside me, and it broke, I think, a lot of us in the company as well. And because I grew up in the UK in the 90s, I saw the NHS, I knew what it's capable of, and I saw the degradation over the last 30 years. And that just, no amount of money, no amount of security, no amount of title can change the fact that when you see a problem, that is that big.
Yeah.
You need to fix it. And that's what happened to me. So Turn was basically the genesis came from that moment. And the fact, and crazily enough, within a couple of months, we had a nanny. She was, very good with the kids. In London, she's a girl called, Anjali from Gujarat in India. Very talented. And then when we asked her, we realized she was an operating theatre nurse.
Oh, wow. And she was working as a nanny.
Working as a nanny. And her dream was to work in the UK in the NHS. And what happens is that she ended up finding an agent to get her a job. She paid the guy some money, paid the guy some more money, kept paying until the father had to sell their family home so that she could move to the UK, live her dream to work at the NHS. She gets the job, gets the visa, comes over, realizes the job is fake. So it was just the world telling me like something has to be done. Like this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like you've got extremely talented people that are aspiring to contribute and serve these communities and these countries. And at the same time, you've got health system that's completely breaking down because of a shortage of workers. And like this made no sense to me. So look, the Turn came about from that sort of those insights and very real sort of very personal, deeply personal insights that we've got the biggest shortage in skilled workers that the global north has seen. You've got US, Canada, Australia,
all of these
Japan,
countries,
Germany, UK.
We keep on hearing that the healthcare system is so broken across all of these quote unquote developed countries, right? And you hear about people like I was telling you, I had a friend who passed away recently, a very young girl in her 20s, got diagnosed in Canada before she could even get access to, her first course of treatment.
Wow.
She passed away. And maybe if they'd brought her back to Pakistan, she could have accessed that easily because, in Pakistan, you can pay for it and get access to it if you have that privilege. But in Canada, even though maybe she could have paid for it, she just still could not get just the timing was completely off on it, right?
So there's and so sorry to hear that. And we talked about it a bit earlier. I just... It's crazy because the reason why this is broken, right, is the shortages are that acute, wherein, as I mentioned, 84 million people, essentially skilled workers short in the global north, 24 million almost in healthcare and old age care. And these economies are not getting any younger, right? You've got average ages of 45, even 50 years old in Japan now, average age of 50 years old in Japan.
Wow.
You've got replacement rates, so fertility rates are massively declining. You need 2.1 to stabilize the population. Countries are at 0.7 at this point. People don't want to do these roles. These are hard jobs in tough conditions. Even the youth that are coming out, which is very, very, very few. So it has to be solved through a program of essentially connecting the dots between overseas talent towards these regions. If you look at the Indian subcontinent, India, while the economy is doing really well, we've got 1.4 billion people. It's the most populous country. At the same time, you've got almost 105 million people unemployed. Like the amount of applications you get per job in India is just off the charts. Like it's just unbelievable.
It's same for Pakistan.
Same for Pakistan. It's unbelievable. So, and while the good thing that the government has done is invest in infra, so you've got double the number of nurses coming out, double the number of doctor seats, right? It's just exponentially growing in the last 5 years, last 15 years as well. But they cannot get domestically absorbed. There's just not enough jobs domestically. So I think the output pressure from places like India, Pakistan, the inward sort of massive requirements in countries like Germany, like UK, like the Middle East, you want to connect those dots. So that's sort of where Turn came about. The name, to your original question, so the name comes from the Arctic tern, which is a migratory bird that sort of flies the maximum distance every year for migration, 65,000 kilometers. It's a story of individual struggle.
It's known for resilience. The Arctic tern is known for resilience.
Exactly. So it's individual struggle for future generations. It's a borderless world. It's taking flight. And those are the emotions we sort of build the company with.
No, so absolutely beautiful. And like I was saying, when you were telling me about your dad and the fact that he was in the Indian Railway, which is this massive system of human movement, right, across the country. So you've seen or you've been exposed to that early. So I think it's in your blood somewhere.
I think we call it, in startup world, we call it the unfair advantage that founders need to have. What is your unfair advantage when you're approaching a particular category? And I think for me, that has been understanding public sector, understanding migration patterns, being that migrant myself, understanding how, if you will, connecting sort of long supply chains. So those were the unfair advantages that I came into this business with, category with, and that's sort of given, I think, a little bit of benefit as we've built it out.
So tell me a little bit about the business as it stands now. I know congratulations, you've raised a $24 million Series A recently. I want to know about the fundraising journey, but more on the business. Whatever metrics you track, what your North Star metric is, what are the kind of big numbers, anything that you can possibly share to showcase, where does the business stand today?
Sure. So we started with the UK as a market. We started working with the NHS. We sort of covered around 18% of the NHS as clients. We started with India as one of the sourcing markets. Supply markets. We then looked at North Africa. We do Central Asia now as well, and Philippines. I think the business sort of migrated from then UK to Germany. Somehow over the last 10, 12 years, even with IMO and with Turn, Germany's somehow been a very big market for us.
You have some connection to Germany.
My wife grew up in Germany. I don't know if that has something to do with it.
I'm sure it does.
And half my board members are always German. I don't know why. So I think it's something to do with the market as well. Is quite locked, insular. So if you can actually unlock it through understanding the regulation well, you can actually create a fairly large outcome. So we expanded to Germany, then the Middle East and Japan. Today, the business is sort of, we have a database of internationally mobile professionals of around 650,000 healthcare pros.
Okay.
Nurses, doctors, allied health professionals looking at sort of overseas employment. We work with over 100 healthcare systems, not just individual hospitals, but systems. These are large trusts in the UK, large sort of university clinics in Germany, to some of the biggest names in the region, in the UAE and Saudi. We are currently, as a business, doing around $20 million in annual revenues. We still feel we're still not reaching where we want to be. So by next year, the goal is to sort of grow that 3 to 4x as well. That's sort of where we are.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that will happen. I'm sure you will surpass that. Avi, if you look back at your overall your entrepreneurial journey with Turn and otherwise, including even Cars 24. It was Cars 24, right?
Yes,
Cars 24. Right. What is something that you feel you were not prepared for when it comes to startup life or entrepreneurial life? What is something that really kind of punched you in the face because you just were not ready for it?
Great question. So many things. I think the one thing I would say is the amount of uncertainty and imposter syndrome that you carry on a day-to-day business, regardless of your past, is just completely unsettling.
It makes me feel better that you're saying this, okay? Because when I look at you, I'm like, okay, that's kind of one day, maybe if I'm really, really lucky and I work really hard, I'll get to that point. But if you're saying you have imposter syndrome, or uncertainty, that's just, I think I live in perpetual existential crisis at this point in time. I think at a cellular level, I've become comfortable with, questioning my existence and the existence of everything in my business. And, it's in that phase.
Exactly.
But you're telling me it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. I think what happens is you get comfortable with that uncertainty over time. I think that's probably what changes, but it doesn't go away. And I think the more we embrace this Schrodinger's cat situation of alive and dead at the same time as a company, the happier we're going to be.
Alive and dead at the same time. That's an interesting way to look at it. So do you think you've developed a particular habit that's allowed you to be more comfortable in this scenario? Do you think there's something that maybe could even act as advice for newer founders?
Honestly, I think just build your tribe, make sure you approach help, right? Professional coaching. So I take coaching on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Both me and my co-founder, I'm big fans of that. Approach if, there will be dark times, look at therapy. Every single employee in our company has access to therapy paid by the company.
That's amazing.
I just think there is not enough talk about mental health. I think it's the loneliest journey you can be on while you're surrounded by people. I just think not enough talk goes around it.
Yeah.
It's not talked about enough, rather. I genuinely think building that muscle and in being open with the fact that you need help when you need it the most, including your partners, your co-founders, it's super important
Absolutely.
to do that.
No, I completely agree with you. And Umar and I were recently having this conversation about therapy, because therapy, especially in brown households, is still, I mean, I think the taboo around it is breaking. And it's the same for across the Middle East. I mean, we're all brown in our own ways. But therapy happens to be something that is still newer, right? And Umar, my co-founder, and you know him, of course, was saying the other day, he's like, therapy should be defined as something that we believe other people need.
Yes.
But we don't need it. Because anytime we're speaking to somebody, you know, they're all for therapy. But when you ask somebody to take therapy, they say, no, I think I'm okay. I don't need it. But maybe everybody else around me really needs, you know, therapy.
No, I'm a big fan. I think all of our leadership, everybody has
same.
access to it. We use it all the time. It doesn't have to be when you're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it is also about just processing the week and understanding the emotions and why you're feeling a certain way, why you're more irritated this week with your team, why you weren't able to console or help somebody that was going through a difficult patch. Like, I just think so much of it is about just unpacking. So that I find professional coaching like therapy for leaders, right? It's like therapy for leaders. So that's why I'm a big believer in that as well. And I find that allows us to almost become better leaders, because we sort of process the emotions and then look at the rational facts and then take decisions.
Yeah.
That would be one thing that I'd strongly recommend. It's a lonely journey.
Absolutely.
Make sure you have your tribe.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's come back to the fundraising bit. Is there, so the most recent round, did you raise at all from like GCC VCs or MENA VCs?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
How was the process like for you? How did it work out?
So fundraising is a very interesting dance. I can only describe it as a dance where everybody is looking at each other. They want to dance with you, but you're not sure if you'd ask. That's the best analogy I've been able to find about it. To be honest, I think you should never, this is probably going to be a bit controversial, you should never actively raise. You should let it happen to you. So you should not be selling, they should be buying. And I think the way to create that sort of almost tension, the chemistry rather, and tension is by what a process called breadcrumbing, right? As probably people know, which is dropping enough hints to various places. Word does get around. The fact of the matter is VCs love to talk. That's one common trait across the VC ecosystem, is that news travels fast. So instead of you raising, it almost should be them wanting in to your company. And I think that's where the narrative building and understanding the core aspects of what you're creating and how big it can be and the traction that you're generating sort of almost has to be disseminated in various ways. So we actually didn't actively raise, to be honest. It happened to us. We got preempted now twice, this round and the previous round. We're very fortunate to have in my opinion, some of the best investors on the planet that we could have hoped for, at least for us, right? Again, every company is different. In our case, we ended up having Notion Capital, which is one of the leading B2B investors in Europe, and Local Globe, actually, who've backed several sort of both decacons and unicorns and multiple IPOs, one of the best shops in the UK, and EQ2, which is a Dubai-based, incredible early-stage VC. Really, really happy with them. I think they came on board, apart from RTP, who we have had, again, Dubai and UK and India-based fund backing us. But I think the process of getting here has been fairly, it often seems easier once it's done. It's, when you're going through it, it feels very long and painful. But I think the three takeaways for us has been over the past and this round has been, number one, as I mentioned, is let them buy versus you selling. So figure out how to achieve that. Number two, I think, is have a very clear vision. I think a lot of founders undersell their company and they are not able to articulate the big outcome that the company can achieve for the category. VCs are not private equity. They're not backing a company that can do 10 million revenues. They're looking at something that can do 100 million, a billion in revenues. So the big outcome is super important as well. And number three is, I guess, as I mentioned, timing. It's everything. So why now? Why are you able to uniquely do this, solve this problem now? and why wasn't it possible before? I think those largely 3 aspects. And look, rest of it is purely being able to identify. Sometimes actually people don't get this enough, but being able to identify the thesis that the investor has, which I call the investor model fit. Really look for that. Like you might have a great brand name, but it's not about the brand name.
Yeah.
It's really about the person within that fund and what their thesis is. So if you do enough research and understand that and provide sort of enough breadcrumbs that reach that person, they will approach you at the right time.
I want to ask you a slightly different question. So, and this again is not really like not specifically for Turn's fundraise, but you've fundraised before and you've dealt with many VCs across many markets up until this point, right? So one of the pieces of advice that every founder will hear at least once if they're fundraising is don't take advice from bad investors, or be very careful who you take money from, right? So the reason I'm asking you this question is because we were having this conversation also across multiple WhatsApp groups that I'm a part of, which is when you're taking or about to take money from someone, they're usually quite nice. I mean, most of the time, they're not really going around, kind of waving the red flag.
They want to come in,
Yeah. But later, you might realize that you've gotten in this relationship with people that you are not aligned with.
Yeah.
So have you had experiences like that where you realize later you're like, oh no, what have I done?
Yes.
And B, do you have any advice as to like what are some things to look out for before that kind of, because I think later you're like, I wish I had not taken that money. I would rather let my company die than take money from this person again, right? It gets that bad, and we've seen it play out for many of our friends.
It can bring down companies,
it can kill companies.
So, excellent question, by the way, and I think it's a very relevant topic, not talked about enough. In the real estate investment startup we had, we did have one of those board members, investors rather, one of the investors, where we still have PTSD from that. My co-founder, both him and I would talk about it, and we almost would feel like we had to throw up before a board meeting. That's how bad it was. And look, I mean, again, I said it's not the fund; it can be often the person. And I think this created such an unhealthy dynamic. And eventually, we ended up did buying them out. Incoming investors did end up buying them out. But the point is, it does happen more often than it's talked about. In fact, I think it's Vinod Khosla who says 90% of investors add negative value, or 80% of investors add negative value, 20% of investors add neutral value to positive value. Try and be that 20%, right? His advice to VCs. And I luckily, we've not seen as much of that except for like this one occasion. But to be very frank, so how do you assess VCs? Think of it like, I think the mistake we make, or a lot of people I've made, is that when somebody's giving you the money, you think they own you, right?
That's also our relationship with money, right? We believe that the person who's giving the money is like giving something, and even though you're literally giving your blood, sweat, and tears and so many years of your life, it just doesn't seem equal. And
I think the best VCs you will find are the most humble ones. And I genuinely believe that. I think you find people that really, really admire founders. They really believe that you are creating the value. And I think the best VCs understand that when the time comes for an exit, the founder's the one in charge. It's not you anymore. So unless you maintain that relationship, unless you're able to create value for them, unless you're able to support them when the times are the toughest, they're not going to think about you at that point. I think a lot of VCs they have started to understand that, but the best VCs definitely get it. So the thing that we do typically is we do a lot of, while we're having conversations, number one, spend a lot of time. This is not a one-night situation. This is a long-term marriage, right? When you're approaching a marriage, you don't suddenly sort of, I mean, we do in our part of the world, but you get to know the person, right? You want to meet them, you want to understand them, you want to get feedback on them.
But you want that check fast, right? So you don't usually spend time. I think, and I completely agree. I think that's where maybe the mistakes are often made, where we are just not thinking it through deeply enough. You're just like, okay, I'm talking to like 150 people. I need yeses from 10 10 out of 150 or whatever. So I just need to get them to the yes fast enough so that I can close and move on to the next one.
Which is why the breadcrumbing, right? So you almost need to have earlier conversations as opposed to let them know the company before you're raising.
Yeah.
So we literally tell we're not raising, but I'm happy to have a chat.
Yeah.
Have that chat, build that relationship early. Versus the 10 days before you. Because even from their side, they have not done enough diligence. If it's a hot deal, they will just sign the check because they want to come in.
Yeah.
And that usually turns out to be a bad arrangement. It's very similar to a marriage. Like if you're dating for 5 days and get married, I mean, in Las Vegas, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That marriage is not going to end well. And that often happens. So I think recognizing that this is a marriage and it's not dating anymore is critical.
Yeah.
Doing enough diligence on asking portfolio companies. So I often ask the investor coming in, can you name 3 of your companies? And I want at least one of them where things have not gone well.
Ooh.
I want to talk to your portfolio company where things have not gone well. That is when you learn the most. And I think certain regions are slightly better than others. So, I do appreciate that there's cultural nuances there, but I found the best VCs will open up and say, look, here's the list, talk to them. This is the company that didn't do well. And I actually want you to speak to them to understand how much I supported them in the end.
I was thinking about this recently as well. We were, like I said, we've been having these conversations, and I was thinking about our own investors, and one of our investors, I2I Ventures, who's been with us from like day zero. Literally, they were the first yes we got, and they followed on in our second round as well. And they're just absolutely, just amazing. They're 2 women partners, and an amazing team that they've built. And I was thinking through most of the times that, come to like the top of my mind when I think about them are times when we were in a tough situation and they were by our sides. Yes. And so the thing is, this is the kind of relationship where it is probably going to be more bad situations than good ones.
Yes.
The celebrations in an actual startup journey, the celebrations are actually few and far between. The existential crisis, the financial issues, things blowing up, people issues, this, that, and the other. There's way more of that, right?
Yes.
So even unlike a marriage, when you're getting married to somebody, you say you want somebody who's going to be able to stick by your side when you get sick, or when you have loss, or when you're grieving something, etc. All the tough times. But in a general course of your life, those things are usually kind of far between. Yes. Versus in a startup's life, it's actually like 10 different crises and then one small celebration, one win, and then 20 different pieces of things blowing up, issues, etc., challenges, and then one thing to celebrate. Absolutely. So you actually really need people who can stick by you in all of those tough times.
I completely agree with you. I think the number one skill set of the top VCs in boards tends to be the ones that have maturity, a situational maturity, and the ones that have empathy as a core skill. Yeah. And it sounds obvious, but that is not as common as you might think. And
I'm gonna put that quote in my newsletter this month, okay? Because that is such an interesting situational maturity. I love that. But absolutely.
Yeah. Because you want to be able to look at what's happening and how it's unraveling, deal with it together with the founder, but continue to look at the big picture. And very, very importantly, check in. Are you okay? Yeah. It's a simple question, but coming from a board member, it means everything. It helps you deal with a lot. Whereas, almost from an investigative point of view, you could have asked the same question, like, why didn't we think about this before?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not dumb, right? We made the mistake. Now we're moving on. So I think as a board member, that tends to be one of the most critical skill sets. Mm-hmm. It's not about the smart advice and the inputs. Sure, there's a lot of smart people out there. And eventually the founder typically knows best. And I think that's the other thing where I found the best board members to be is, this is my thought process, this is my input, but I back you all the way. Whatever you believe is right.
I respect your intelligence.
I'm going to respect your intelligence. You know it better than I do. I'm going to back you. And I've had this time and again. So luckily in our board, we found that an incredibly mature group of people that I've had, difficult decisions where we were not sure if we do this transaction, we launch a new country, we do this M&A. And I go to them, look, this is what I want to think. And they ask me, I said, my confidence level is 70%. They're like, should we really do this deal if it's 70%? I'm like, you know what? I will not be 30, but this is the 30. What do you think? They're like, no, that's not that important. Go ahead. We believe you. So I think just that level of transparency in the courting process pre-ticket is super important because you can't unravel that later.
No.
Do that diligence.
Later
with
you're
that-
stuck.
You're stuck.
You're like,
I mean,
you're
get
both
it?
stuck. Yeah.
Divorces are messy.
Yeah.
In life and in startups, they're super messy.
Yeah.
That's not what you want. So
avoid
you want to
that.
be really courting them. Sorry. Yeah.
No.
The learning about them.
No,
during the
that's
process.
absolutely amazing. My team wrote down tons and tons of amazing questions for you. They went through all of your experiences and they came up with a lot of things. They also found an interview of yours where you said that not AI, but unit economics is actually the name of the game. And that's what's important and what it comes down to. So do you think AI is being overused right now? Do you think it is a bubble? Do you think it is hype? And tell me a little bit about what you meant, because I do want to get to the
Sure.
you're building an AI company, I'm building an AI company, so I want to understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. Look, AI is definitely not a bubble.
Yeah.
First of all, just putting it out there, I think this is one of the most significant transformations for humanity that we've ever seen. It's
agree.
as big as moving from the agricultural economy to the industrial economy, where skill sets for humans had to be completely shifted and retrained. What do I mean by that is, as we moved into industrial economy, there was you literally had to go to a place, stamp in, do some work specifically, like follow, the traits were discipline, repetition, it was analytical problem solving, right? And that's exactly how the workforces have been designed. Now, with AI, the crazy thing is 80% of those skill sets change. You don't need to remember knowledge as much as we used to. It's really about the creativity. It's really about the empathy and the human connections. It's about pattern matching, pattern recognition. It's really about imagining where the world can go and then being able to articulate it clearly. So philosophy, that's what's becoming more and more critical. And I think it's, of course, you need the analytical problem solving to be able to put it into practice. But anyway, the reason I mentioned this is there is a fundamental shift that's happening right now in human skills. When you look at the actual numbers around it, look, whenever there's a bubble that emerges, you find smart money staying away from the category, right? Smart money is countries, sovereigns. Smart money are the largest asset managers. Smart money are people like Warren Buffett, right? Where are they investing? Everybody is parking money in AI at this point. So I think we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the human potential. I think the moment that productivity is increased, several X, the world economically as well as distribution of wealth can significantly improve. So I think we're at the starting of something that's insanely large. However, is this so what I mean by that is we significantly underestimate the long-term impact of things when we overestimate the short-term impact of things, right? So in the short term, I do believe that there is probably an inflation of sorts in terms of the money being spent. Like 60% of what the $100 billion agreement with NVIDIA and OpenAI goes back to them. So there is a little bit of that going on. But I think that makes sense because at least 40% is going to the actual suppliers. But to my point, what I meant by the unit economics was specifically is industries that for a very, very long time, like what we are doing in healthcare, like human mobility, talent mobility, a lot of traditional industry as well will suddenly start to look attractive from a venture outcomes point of view. Why? Is because suddenly places where you're making 5%, 7% EBITDA as businesses suddenly can start making 30, 40%. I'll give you a specific example. So if you look at the BPO sector, where 60% of healthcare cost goes into admin, which are call centers, revenue cycle management, whatnot, insane cost goes into it. If you are able to now turn around those industries by leveraging AI and increasing human potential by 10x, you can increase the EBITDAs from like 5 to 10% to actually 40 to 50%. And I think that's what I meant is really, if you keep an eye on the unit economics and you build companies smartly right now, AI is not cheap, right? So it can really eat into your margins.
Yeah.
If you build companies smartly, you're building a really, really long-term business here and sustainable outcomes versus you just growth at all costs, which was maybe okay in the previous era. You have to be very careful now.
No, I absolutely completely agree with you there. Thank you for explaining that. So I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about India's role generally in the global tech and AI space, because you do kind of keep going back to India in some ways, right? And now shaping what the skilled workforce of the world looks like. What are some feelings that you have around this?
That's a great question. So I think 40% of the global workforce is going to be Indian subcontinent / India over the next 10 years. There's a very real human sort of shift happening, right? Migration continues to accelerate. It's not slowing down, it's going to accelerate high pressure zone, low pressure zones. The reason I sort of go back to sort of the India story across my various businesses is number one, I do fundamentally believe that there is the potential for economic potential for the country is still largely untapped.
Yeah.
I don't think it's reached the full. You look at China, sort of the development they went through. I think there was an over commercialization or production that they went through, and there's sort of been a slowdown there. India does not seem to be following a similar trajectory. They're doing a bit more, whether you call it through the slowness of the bureaucracy or whether you call it through design of how they wanted to go about growth. It's been more sustainable and it's been continuous. So naturally, if you're playing into what is one of the most largest emerging markets in the world, you have a foot in that, you will be able to build truly meaningful outcomes. The second thing is, I mean, of course, being Indian, I do resonate with the fact of giving back and being able to build something that helps. So I have, for example, advised the National Skilling Council of India, which is the government body under the Ministry of Skills, on what skill sets are required as the country evolves for both domestic and international needs. That's not an official part of my role. I don't get paid for it, but something that I think I would love to continue doing. The last thing of why India, again, I think is connecting back to our specific category, is that there's a lot of countries which used to be net exporters of talent, have started to, especially in healthcare, have started to close down or have moved into what the WHO calls the red list versus the green list. Various countries in Africa have closed down. Philippines is also moving into a different direction. I don't want to go into specific areas of speculation there, but as per all reports, India and the Indian subcontinent continues to be green and will be very, very green for the long term. And what that means is there is enough supply being created of talent that can support the domestic needs and the international needs. Whereas many countries, it is almost, I would say, unethical to go in and take the talent away from certain African countries, move them to Germany, whereas those systems don't really get supported anymore.
No, that's really interesting. Should I open a medical college in Pakistan?
I believe so.
Yeah.
100%.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about that. I was like, "Ooh, this could be." I mean, then that means that there is so much more opportunity, right?
Yes.
Where specifically when you develop that skill set. I mean, we're just talking about medicine. So one question that I did ask you off camera was, do you see Turn as a healthcare business or as a human resource business?
Yeah. Look, we spent a little bit of time on the vision because we need to articulate it for the team. More recently, actually, literally a couple of days ago, we were spending a little bit of time trying to fix that in my head, and nothing has changed since we started, which is, if you remember the two stories I told you about, it is literally, that's the company. We want to rebuild healthcare, leveraging or accelerating a more efficient workforce, right, or distribution of workforce. So nothing changes. I think we do believe that healthcare is what props up the countries. It has a direct impact on elections. It affects people around us, ourselves, our kids. It's 15% of GDP in many countries. I think it's the single most important thing. If you want to look at the health of a country, you want to look at the health system. So we do believe it's the most impactful and has a direct sort of almost a direct line to creating meaningful societal value, and that's where for us that's the core.
Yeah, but you don't think that Turn is going to kind of move towards becoming like a more general like AI resource platform once you have healthcare down pat in other sectors as well for migrant workers in other sectors? Because that was the kind of core of my kind of question, right?
So I wouldn't. Never say never.
Okay.
Look, we are in talks with certain governments at a central level, a national level, to be able to. So one of the applications of our platform now is we're looking at health systems in Germany, for example, with BMG, also in the Middle East now with the UAE, one of the government regulators and operators in healthcare, where we're looking at their entire organization and saying, look, we've got let's say 30,000 people, 60 specializations in nursing, 140 attributes, hard skills, soft skills, and psychometrics, and so on, and a number of years of experience, a three-dimensional matrix. We plot that entire organization. What that allows us to do is to give them very insightful data and hyper-specialized plans for an individual nurse, let's say pediatric nurse with 3 years of experience, on what the skill sets are missing, where they can grow, where the capacity is missing, and so on. So it gives. This is not possible before. A BCG or McKinsey might take several years to do this for an organization. We can do it in weeks. And that's allowing us at a national level to start to predict capacity challenges, start to predict skilling challenges and solve them, and start to then plug in the supply on a recruitment basis. Now, the reason I mentioned that is this is not uniquely a healthcare problem.
Yeah.
So we're having conversations at HRD level, at ministry level, in various governments to see if we can apply this technology beyond healthcare as well. Our core, I think, will continue to be, as I mentioned, if the health and well-being and of the citizens. But yeah, it can go significant. Like if you can imagine having a personalized AI for every single person in the country that guides them through their career, guides them through their health journey, guides them through potentially even matchmaking. Who knows? I do think a lot of that is possible, and we're working on certain things in the labs for that as well.
Yeah, no, I can completely imagine that. So amazing. So last 5 minutes, we'll just get through just a few more questions. I want to play this finish the sentence game with you, okay? So the first one is, Avi believes that the future of work will depend on
right skilling.
Okay. Right skilling based on like the requirements of the kind of jobs that are going to come up?
So I think, yes. If you look at healthcare, if I look at doctors, if you're a radiologist and you're a radiology in training in medical school, you better be changing how you're learning. You do not need to accurately read what an image says, an X-ray says. What you need to be doing is to understand the prognosis, the diagnosis, and the patient care plans. Even that, I think, is going to change a lot. So the skills that were being taught 5 to 10 years ago in medical school and the skills that need to be taught for the workforce are diverging quite rapidly. What that means is the connection between workforce and education has to get significantly tighter.
Absolutely.
Today, it's really poor.
And not just for medical, by the way. Like while you were talking, I was remembering the fact that in undergrad business school, in a statistics class, they made me memorize 10 different ways, 10 different like formulas to calculate the exact same thing. And I had to, that was the one class ever that I got an F in because I just didn't want to do it. I was so annoyed, right? Yeah. And the one thing that brings me great joy is that my daughter will not have to do that because the world will have shifted.
Knowledge is democratized. Yeah. So really knowing what skills you need to be picking up in order to be much more productive in the workforce that's to be. Because 70% of the jobs that we're going to have in the next 10 years did not exist, will not have existed right now. So really keeping a track. And that's where sort of we're spending a lot of time in identifying that.
Yeah. Founders need to stop obsessing over
conferences.
But that's where the breadcrumbing happens.
So yes, I agree with you. I think there's
but there's too many.
There's a fine line. What I've realized exactly, there's too many. I think everybody is setting up a conference. I think there was this funny tweet that I was reading about, like we're an agency. We will take $100,000 from you, and we will send your competitor to all the conferences, give them all the awards, make sure they get access to everything, being invited to all the dinners, just to keep them busy. So look, I think there's a line. I think it's super, as you correctly said, breadcrumbing, super critical. I do think it does get done quite well in sort of more intimate one-on-one settings or one-on-four settings, and identify what those high impact events are. Like I tend to go and speak, I tend to go in to certain events. you will not know when it's become too much.
Yeah.
And I think having that muscle to remind yourself that, okay, I think this one is probably not as critical, and start to rate them. So I have a ranking system as well internally. This one I do want to make sure, because these 5 people I want to meet there.
I think this is probably a mistake that you make more early on, because not everybody has the privilege to be in the smaller circles. Now, I mean, that's also the issue, right? Like for a lot of people who are just starting off, first-time founders, they will not get access to the kind of people that they need to be speaking to. So for a lot of times, they will need to be at the conference to even be in,
I agree.
I don't know, 6-7 step radius of somebody that they ever want to have a conversation with. Of course, being at the conference with that person still doesn't make the needle move. It doesn't move the needle. Frankly, it doesn't, right? But that's the hope, that's the aspiration that they're there with, that they'll make those connections, that they'll make those friends. So, but it's tough, I actually wrote a newsletter about this like a month ago with the exact same kind of thing, that you need to really think through what you're trying to get out of it. Absolutely. Okay. If I wasn't building Turn, I would be?
Teaching.
Ooh, teaching what?
Well, so I would be doing a PhD first.
Okay.
So I'm super interested in sort of going deeper into this sort of psychology of org design, and how do sort of people think, and how does, how do you grow? How do you, how do you really connect the dots, as I mentioned, between sort of skills that I have or I don't have versus where I want to go? That's just been me as a person. I'm sort of super curious about humans and why they operate in certain ways, and why certain times the same person is a top performer and why they're suddenly not. Like, I'm really interested to understand that. To me, that, why would a 22-year-old with sort of, starry eyes and coming into a company have a significantly higher performance than, let's say, a 35-year-old that has the expertise and experience in that exact sector?
I have some thoughts on this.
I would love to hear. I would love to hear. So I'm really fascinated by it.
Yeah.
So to me, like, I love to give back. I love to sort of try and contribute in some meaningful way. And it's probably the age showing now, like, or it's something that I probably wasn't as interested in before, but more and more. So my wife keeps saying that if you weren't building a company, you'd be teaching, and I agree with her.
Yeah. Well, maybe, at some point on the side, you can start. I mean, you teach us every time we speak. So I think that's one way that you're already giving back and creating impact. But thank you so much, Avi. I think we've got to stop here because of the clock. But I would love to continue this conversation. Maybe we'll have you back another day and go deeper into some of these topics. But thank you so much. I know you've been traveling. The family has been sick on and off, especially with kids. They are always bringing back some viral or the other. So I know it's been a rough schedule, and you still took some time out for me. Thank you so much for doing that. And I hope that we get to continue this conversation off camera as well. Thank you so much for watching.